Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're diving into something absolutely insane. What if Luffy mastered Haki early and saved Ace? Imagine Luffy unlocking all three Haki types during Alabasta instead of Marineford. Conqueror's Haki knocking out thousands, Armament Haki letting him punch Logia users, and Observation Haki giving him precognition. This combo is absolutely broken. Normally it takes years to master even one type, but emotional awakening of all three, that's Emperor-level power overnight. This creates a butterfly effect that reshapes everything. Crocodile gets demolished, supernovas unite at Sabaody, and Marineford becomes a coordinated assault that brings down the world government itself. Smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell. Let's dive into this masterpiece. When kings rise early, the underground chamber beneath Alubarna's palace trembled as dust and debris rained from above. Water continued to seep through the cracked stone walls, threatening to flood the ancient tomb where the final battle for Alabasta's fate was unfolding. Luffy stood battered and bloodied, his straw hat askew, facing the towering figure of Sir Crocodile who loomed over Princess Vivi's crumpled form. Mugiwara, Crocodile's voice dripped with contempt as he raised his golden hook, poison glistening on its curved edge. You've been nothing but an annoying pest. Time to exterminate you once and for all. But Luffy's eyes weren't on Crocodile. They were fixed on Vivi, who lay motionless against the chamber wall, her blue hair matted with blood, tears still glistening on her bruised cheeks. Even unconscious, her face was twisted in anguish, the expression of someone who had watched her kingdom burn while being powerless to stop it. She cried, Luffy whispered, his voice barely audible over the dripping water and Crocodile's mocking laughter. She cried for her people? Images flashed through Luffy's mind. The dying towns they'd passed through, the rebel army fighting their own countrymen, the starving children in Nanohana, the desperation in Vivi's voice as she begged him to save Alabasta. All of it, all of the suffering because of the man standing before him. What's that, boy? Having second thoughts before you? Crocodile's taunt died in his throat as an overwhelming pressure suddenly filled the chamber. The very air seemed to thicken, becoming almost solid. Ancient stones that had stood for millennia began to crack under an invisible force. Luffy's head slowly rose, his eyes now burning with an intensity that made Crocodile instinctively step back. Black energy began to crackle around the young pirate's body like dark lightning, and when he spoke, his voice carried a weight that seemed to shake the foundations of the world itself. You made her cry. The words hit Crocodile like a physical blow. Every instinct screamed at him to move, to attack, to do something, but his body wouldn't obey. The pressure radiating from this 17-year-old boy was unlike anything he'd ever experienced, even during his battles with Whitebeard years ago. Impossible, Crocodile breathed. Conqueror's Haki, but you're just a rookie. Gomu no. Luffy's fist began to swell, but now it was coated in something new, a metallic black sheen that seemed to absorb the chamber's dim light. The armament Haki flowed over his arm like liquid steel, hardening into an impenetrable coating. King Kong. Time seemed to slow as Luffy's enhanced senses, his newly awakened observation Haki, showed him exactly where to strike. He could see Crocodile's sand body attempting to dissolve, could predict the Logia user's desperate counterattack, could feel the precise moment when his opponent would be most vulnerable. Gatling, the barrage of Haki-enhanced punches struck Crocodile faster than the eye could follow. Each impact sent shockwaves through the chamber, and for the first time since eating his devil fruit, Crocodile felt pain. Real, overwhelming pain as the armament Haki bypassed his Logia intangibility completely. Crocodile's massive form was hurled backward, crashing through stone pillars like they were made of paper. He slammed into the far wall with enough force to create a crater, coughing up blood as he slumped to the ground. This can't be happening, Crocodile gasped, struggling to maintain his composure as he stared at the boy who had just shattered his invincible reputation. You're just a child from East Blue. How do you possess all three forms of Haki? Luffy stood in the center of the destroyed chamber, his body still crackling with dark energy. His straw hat cast a shadow over his eyes, but his voice carried clearly through the dust and debris. I don't know what this power is, he said quietly, but I know why it came to me now. He looked up, his eyes blazing with conviction. Because I won't let anyone hurt my friends, because I won't let anyone make Vivi cry ever again. Another wave of Conqueror's Haki exploded outward, this one so intense that it rippled through the palace above and across the entire city of Alubarna. In the streets, rebel soldiers and royal guards alike suddenly stopped fighting, overwhelmed by an inexplicable sense of awe and terror. Even miles away, the other Straw Hats felt it, a presence so powerful and determined that it made their hearts race. In the chamber, Crocodile tried one last desperate attack, launching himself forward with his sand powers. But Luffy's observation Haki allowed him to see the move coming long before it happened. He sidestepped effortlessly and grabbed Crocodile by the throat, his armament-coated fingers preventing the warlord from turning to sand. "This is for Vivi," Luffy said, his voice deadly calm, "for her people. For everyone you hurt." The final punch sent Crocodile rocketing upward through layers of stone and earth, bursting through the palace floor above in a geyser of sand and debris. He landed unconscious in the middle of the throne room, witnessed by dozens of shocked palace guards. Back in the chamber, the strange black energy finally faded from Luffy's body, leaving him swaying on his feet. The adrenaline that had fueled his awakening was wearing off, replaced by exhaustion and confusion about what had just happened to him. "Luffy," he turned to see Vivi stirring, her eyes fluttering open. Despite her injuries, she managed a weak smile when she saw him standing victorious. "You did it," she whispered. "You saved everyone." As if summoned by her words, the sound of rainfall began to echo from above. For the first time in 3 years, water was falling from the sky over Alabasta. The drought crocodile's artificial creation was finally broken. Luffy collapsed to his knees beside Vivi, his legs finally giving out. "Yeah," he said with his characteristic grin, though he was still trembling from the power that had coursed through him. "We did it together." But even as relief washed over him, Luffy couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed. The power he'd awakened, this Haki, Crocodile had called it, it felt like more than just a new technique. It felt like a door had opened inside him, revealing depths of strength he'd never known existed. High above them, the rain continued to fall, washing away 3 years of dust and despair from the kingdom of Alabasta. And far across the Grand Line, certain individuals who possessed similar power felt the ripples of a new conqueror's awakening, a presence that would soon change the balance of the entire world. In his ship somewhere on the Grand Line, red-haired Shanks paused mid-drink, his eyes widening as he felt the familiar yet impossibly strong burst of Conqueror's Haki. "That was," he whispered, setting down his sake cup with a trembling hand. Luffy, on the Moby Dick, Whitebeard's eyes snapped open from his nap, a knowing smile crossing his weathered face. "Gururara, looks like Ace's little brother just announced himself to the world." And in Marine headquarters, Fleet Admiral Sengoku felt a chill run down his spine as his Den Mushi began ringing with frantic reports from Alabasta. The age of Monkey D. Luffy had truly begun. Ripples across the sea, the massive knock-up stream that carried the Going Merry skyward 3 days after leaving Alabasta felt different this time. As the ship rocketed through the clouds toward the legendary Sky Island, Luffy stood at the bow with a newfound awareness coursing through his body. The strange power he'd awakened against Crocodile, this Haki, hummed beneath his skin like a constant reminder of the responsibility now resting on his shoulders. "Luffy," Robin's calm voice drew his attention from the swirling clouds below. She approached with a weathered book in her hands, one of many ancient texts she'd been studying since joining the crew. "I've been researching what happened to you in Alabasta. This power you've awakened, it's rarer than you might think." Nami, still shaken by the intensity of Luffy's transformation during the crocodile fight, looked up from her charts. "You mean that scary aura thing, when you went all dark and lightning-y?" "Conqueror's Haki," Robin explained, her archaeological knowledge proving invaluable. "It's said that only 1 in a million people are born with the potential and even fewer ever awaken it. The fact that you manifested all 3 types simultaneously," she paused, studying Luffy's face. "That's unheard of." Luffy tilted his head, his characteristic confusion evident. 3 types? Observation Haki allows you to sense the presence and emotions of others, even predict their movements, Robin continued. Armament Haki can coat your body or weapons in an invisible armor, making you stronger and allowing you to touch Logia users. And Conqueror's Haki. She glanced at the rest of the crew who were listening intently. That's the power to overwhelm others with your willpower alone. Sanji lit a cigarette with slightly trembling hands. So our captain just became one of the most dangerous people in the world overnight? The power was always there, Robin said quietly. Alabasta simply awakened it. High above the clouds, the crew's arrival on Skypia was anything but smooth. The angel-winged inhabitants of Angel Island stared in shock as Luffy's mere presence seemed to make the air itself heavier. Even without consciously activating it, his Conqueror's Haki leaked out in waves, causing weaker-willed individuals to stumble and gasp. Strange, murmured Ganfall, the former god of Skypia, as he observed the young pirate from a distance. This boy's presence feels familiar somehow, like the red-haired man who passed through here years ago. The Straw Hats quickly learned about the ongoing war between the Skypians and the Shandians, a conflict that had raged for 400 years over a piece of land called Upper Yard. But Luffy's enhanced senses, his newly awakened observation Haki, told him there was something much more dangerous lurking in the heart of the ancient city. "There's someone powerful here," Luffy said suddenly, his eyes narrowing as he gazed toward the massive beanstalk that led to Upper Yard. "Really, really powerful and angry." Chopper's fur stood on end. "I can feel it too somehow, like electricity in the air." What they didn't know was that their arrival had already been detected by the self-proclaimed god of Skypia, Enel. Sitting on his throne in the ruins of Shandora, the Logia user's enhanced observation Haki, which the Sky Islanders called Mantra, had sensed something unprecedented in the Blue Sea dweller who just arrived. "Interesting," Enel mused, his golden staff crackling with electricity. "One of the Blue Sea dwellers possesses Mantra as well, and something else. Something that makes my very lightning tremble." His normally composed expression darkened. "No matter, all who defy God must be eliminated." The confrontation came sooner than expected. As the Straw Hats explored the mystical Upper Yard, they encountered not just the island's strange trials and the ongoing war, but the overwhelming presence of Enel himself. When the self-proclaimed god descended from his golden ship, the Ark Maxim, even the air seemed to vibrate with electrical energy. "So," Enel said, his voice carrying the arrogance of someone who'd never known defeat, "you're the one whose presence disturbs my omniscience." Luffy's enhanced senses immediately assessed the threat before him. This wasn't like Crocodile. This enemy's power felt almost unlimited, his mastery of both his devil fruit and observation Haki far beyond anything Luffy had encountered. But something had changed in Luffy since Alabasta. As Enel raised his hand to unleash a devastating lightning attack, Luffy's observation Haki allowed him to see the attack coming several seconds before it happened. He dodged with impossible precision, his body moving almost before Enel had completed the motion. "Impossible?" Enel snarled. "Your mantra shouldn't be, GOMU no pistol." The punch, enhanced with armament Haki, should have been devastating. But Enel's Logia intangibility meant it passed harmlessly through his electric body. Luffy's eyes widened in realization. His Haki wasn't yet strong enough to consistently bypass this level of Logia mastery. "You dare strike at God?" Enel's voice echoed across Upper Yard as he began to glow with electrical energy. "I'll show you the difference between a mere mortal and divinity itself." The battle that followed was unlike anything Skypia had ever witnessed. Enel's lightning attacks, capable of destroying entire sections of the island, struck again and again. But each time, Luffy's rubber body absorbed the electrical assault harmlessly, while his enhanced observation Haki allowed him to predict and dodge the few physical attacks that could actually hurt him. "This is impossible," Enel screamed, his calm, godlike demeanor cracking as he realized his supposedly omnipotent powers were useless against this Blue Sea dweller. "My lightning should be absolute," but Luffy was learning, adapting with each exchange. His armament Haki grew stronger with each failed attempt to tag the Logia user, while his observation Haki began to pick up not just Enel's movements, but his emotions, the growing fear and desperation beneath the god complex. "You're not a god," Luffy said, his voice carrying a weight that made even the ancient ruins of Shandora seem to listen. "You're just a bully who's scared of being challenged." The words hit harder than any physical blow. Enel's electrical aura flared wildly as his composure finally shattered completely. The final confrontation took place as Enel attempted to activate his ultimate technique, the massive thundercloud attack that would destroy all of Skypia. But this time, instead of fighting alone, Luffy found himself supported by both Skypians and Shandians who had set aside their ancient war in the face of this greater threat. "Ring the bell, Luffy," called out Wiper, the Shandian warrior. "Ring Nolan's bell and end this nightmare." With his enhanced Haki guiding him, Luffy could sense the massive golden bell hidden in the ruins of Shandora. But between him and it stood Enel, now in his most powerful form, his body completely transformed into living lightning. "If I cannot rule as God," Enel roared, "then I'll destroy everything and start anew on the moon." The clash between rubber and lightning, between the will of a future pirate king and the delusions of a false god, shook the very foundations of the Sky Island. Luffy's armament Haki, pushed beyond its limits, finally found its mark. His fists, coated in the metallic black sheen, struck through Enel's electrical form and connected with flesh and bone. The impact sent Enel crashing down into the ruins below, his unconscious body creating a crater in the ancient stone. Above, the massive golden bell began to ring for the first time in 400 years, its sound carrying across both the sky and the blue sea below, a song of freedom that could be heard even in the distant waters. As the bell's resonance faded, Luffy collapsed to his knees, exhausted but victorious. Around him, Skypians and Shandians embraced for the first time in centuries, their war finally ended by the actions of a blue sea dweller who had dared to challenge a god. But the victory came with a price. The massive burst of Conqueror's Haki that Luffy had unleashed during the final battle rippled outward like a shockwave, traveling far beyond Skypia's clouds and reaching the ears and senses of some of the most powerful individuals in the world. On a red-haired pirate ship sailing the Grand Line, Shanks suddenly stopped drinking, his sake cup frozen halfway to his lips. "Ben," he called to his first mate, his voice unusually serious. "Change course. We need to find Luffy." "Boss," Ben Beckman looked up from cleaning his rifle. "Something wrong?" Shanks' expression was a mixture of pride and concern. "That boy, his Haki just reached a level that's going to draw attention. The kind of attention he's not ready for yet." Meanwhile, on the Moby Dick, Whitebeard's massive form stirred as he felt the distant ripple of power. "Ace," the world's strongest man called to his 2nd Division commander who was training on deck. "Your brother's making quite a name for himself. That Haki," Whitebeard's eyes gleamed with interest, "reminds me of someone I used to know." And in Marine headquarters, Fleet Admiral Sengoku slammed his fist on his desk as he read the latest reports from Skypia. "A rookie pirate with Conqueror's Haki defeats a former Logia warlord." Sengoku's voice was grim as he addressed Vice Admiral Garp. "This Monkey D. Luffy is becoming more dangerous than we anticipated." Garp, unusually subdued, simply nodded. "That boy's grandfather taught him well," he muttered under his breath, too quietly for Sengoku to hear. The ripples of Luffy's awakened power were spreading across the world, and soon, very soon, the most powerful forces on the Grand Line would take notice of the Straw Hat Pirates. But for now, as the crew prepared to leave Skypia with their ship loaded with gold and their hearts full of the satisfaction that comes from ending a centuries-old war, they had no idea that their captain's growing strength had just painted a target on their backs. One that would soon draw the attention of emperors, admirals, and forces far beyond anything they'd faced before. The age of hiding in the shadows was over. Monkey D. Luffy had announced himself to the world, and the world was beginning to take notice. Fire and rubber, the sea breeze carried the scent of salt and sawdust as the Going Merry limped into Water 7's magnificent canals. The ship that had carried them faithfully through countless adventures groaned with each gentle wave, her hull showing the accumulated damage of their journey from the East Blue to the Sky Islands. Luffy stood at the bow, his enhanced observation Haki picking up the emotions radiating from their beloved ship. Sadness, pain, a desperate desire to keep sailing despite her failing body. The sensation made his chest tighten with an unfamiliar ache. "The ship," Robin said quietly, joining him at the railing. "You can sense her feelings now, can't you?" Luffy nodded solemnly. Since awakening his Haki, he'd become increasingly aware of the voices around him, not just people, but objects with strong emotional attachments. Even the sea itself seemed to whisper its secrets. She's trying so hard to stay strong for us, he murmured. But she's hurting. The magnificent city of water 7 rose before them like a liquid mountain, its canals and waterways creating a vertical maze of architecture unlike anything they'd seen. Ships of every size and description filled the harbor, from elegant passenger vessels to massive cargo freighters. But it was the sight of skilled shipwrights leaping between buildings with superhuman agility that truly caught their attention. Incredible, Chopper gasped as a man with a long nose and distinctive hairstyle bounded across rooftops with impossible speed. Are they all that fast? They're using some kind of technique, Zoro observed, his hand instinctively moving to his swords. Those movements aren't natural. As they docked at one of the city's many shipyards, Luffy's enhanced senses suddenly flared. A familiar presence was approaching, one that made his heart race with excitement and disbelief. That feeling, he whispered, his eyes scanning the crowd of dock workers and tourists moving along the canals. Then he saw him. Orange hat, black hair, freckled face, and that unmistakable confident grin that could only belong to one person in the world. Ace? Luffy's shout echoed across the water as he launched himself from the ship's deck using his rubber powers. Portgas D. Ace, who had been making his way through the crowd in search of his little brother, looked up just in time to catch the rubber projectile that slammed into him with enough force to send them both tumbling into the canal. The crew watched in amazement as the two brothers surfaced, both laughing and shouting at each other with joy. Water dripped from Ace's hat as he grinned at his younger brother. "Luffy, you crazy rubber bastard, what the hell was that for?" "Ace. What are you doing here? I missed you so much. Are you hungry? Sanji made really good food yesterday and—" "Slow down, Luffy," Ace laughed, swimming toward the dock. "One question at a time." As they climbed out of the water, the rest of the Straw Hats gathered around, curious about their captain's unexpected reunion. Ace took a moment to study his brother, and his expression gradually changed from joy to amazement. "Luffy," he said slowly, his voice carrying a note of awe, "your presence, it's completely different from when I saw you in Alabasta. This power you're giving off." Ace's eyes widened as realization hit him. "You've awakened Haki, haven't you?" "All 3 types?" Luffy tilted his head in confusion. "Haki? Oh, you mean that weird power thing? Robin told me about it, but I still don't really understand." "Show me," Ace interrupted, his expression serious now. "Right here, right now. I need to see how far you've come." The dock suddenly fell silent as workers and tourists alike sensed the change in atmosphere. Without conscious effort, Luffy's Conqueror's Haki began to seep out, a pressure that made weaker-willed individuals step back nervously. Ace's own aura flared in response, not as overwhelming as his brother's, but the experienced presence of someone who'd been using Haki for years. Fire began to dance around his fingertips as his excitement grew. "Incredible," he breathed. "Luffy, do you have any idea how rare what you've done is? Most people train for years just to awaken one type of Haki. You've mastered all 3 in a matter of months." Is that good?" Luffy asked, still not entirely grasping the significance. Nami stepped forward, having grown accustomed to translating her captain's achievements for him. "Luffy, remember what Robin told us about Conqueror's Haki. 1 in a million people can do it. You're basically announcing to the world that you have the potential to be a king." Sanji lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. And now his brother, who's also apparently a monster, is here. Great. Just great. That evening, in the guest room Galila Company had provided while they assessed the Going Merry's condition, Ace sat across from his little brother with a serious expression Luffy rarely saw from him. "Luffy, I need you to listen to me carefully," Ace began. "When you awakened your Haki in Alabasta, it sent ripples across the entire Grand Line. Every major power in the world knows about you now. So, I was gonna be famous anyway when I become Pirate King." "This is different," Ace insisted. "The 4 emperors, the marine admirals, the world government, they're all watching you now, and not just as a potential threat for the future. They see you as a threat right now." Luffy's expression grew more serious as he sensed the genuine worry in his brother's emotions through his enhanced Haki. "That's why I'm here," Ace continued. "I convinced Pops Whitebeard to let me leave the pursuit of Blackbeard to come find you, your Haki awakening. It's changed everything." "What do you mean?" Ace ran a hand through his hair, struggling to find the right words. There's going to be a war, Luffy. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. The balance of power in the world is shifting, and you're at the center of it whether you want to be or not. Before Luffy could respond, Robin's voice came from the doorway. May I join this conversation? I believe there are things you both need to know. She entered carrying an ancient book, her expression grave. I've been researching the historical significance of what Luffy has awakened. The last person to spontaneously manifest all three types of Haki was Gall D. Roger himself. The room fell silent. Even Ace, who had sailed with Whitebeard and fought countless powerful enemies, felt a chill at those words. The world government has been hunting people with the will of D for centuries, Robin continued. They fear what you represent, the potential to overturn the current world order. Luffy's early mastery of Haki will only accelerate their timeline. Ace stood abruptly, his fists clenching. Then I'm not leaving, Luffy, I'm joining your crew. What? But what about Whitebeard? Your crew, Pops will understand, Ace said firmly. My duty is to protect my brother, especially now. Besides, he grinned, his usual confidence returning, you're gonna need someone to teach you how to really use that power. The next few days in Water 7 became an intensive training camp. While Galila worked on the Going Merry, Ace put his little brother through exercises designed to refine his raw Haki into precise techniques. Observation Haki isn't just about seeing attacks coming, Ace explained as they sparred on a secluded section of dock. It's about understanding emotions, sensing intentions, even glimpsing possible futures if you get advanced enough. Luffy closed his eyes, extending his senses as Ace had taught him. He could feel his brother's presence like a warm flame, could sense the exact moment Ace would strike, even detect the slight sadness his brother felt when thinking about leaving the Whitebeard pirates. I can feel what you're feeling, Luffy said suddenly. You're sad about leaving your crew, but you're also proud of me? Ace smiled, lowering his flame-coated fist. Very good, now let's work on armament Haki. Raw power isn't enough, you need precision. The training intensified as word reached them that CP9 had revealed themselves and taken Robin. But this time, instead of panic and desperation, the crew responded with coordinated determination. This is different from canon, Luffy muttered to himself, using his enhanced observation Haki to track the government agents' movements through the city. What was that, Luffy? Ace asked, flames dancing around his arms as he prepared for battle. Nothing, just, I can sense where they're taking her, and I can feel something else. They're not as confident as they're pretending to be. When CP9 finally confronted the Straw Hats in Galila's main building, they found themselves facing not just a rookie crew, but a coordinated team led by a Haki master and supported by one of the most notorious pirates in the New World. Rob Lucci, the CP9's strongest member, sized up the opposition with his enhanced senses. Fire Fist Ace, he said coolly, your presence here complicates things. Good, Ace replied, fire erupting around his entire body. Complications are my specialty. Luffy stepped forward, his body crackling with armament Haki. Give Robin back, now. I'm afraid that's not possible, Lucci said, beginning his transformation into his hybrid leopard form. But perhaps we can arrange a trade, your life for hers. Counteroffer, Luffy said, his voice carrying the weight of his awakened conqueror's Haki. You let her go, and I don't flatten this entire building with you in it. The pressure that filled the room was unlike anything CP9 had experienced. Even Lucci, trained to resist mental attacks, felt his knees buckle slightly under the sheer force of Luffy's will. But it was Ace's next words that truly shook the government agents. You know, Luffy, I had a prophetic dream last night. Want to know what I saw? Luffy turned to his brother, his enhanced senses picking up the absolute certainty in Ace's emotions. I saw myself on a scaffold about to be executed by the Marines. And do you know why they were executing me? Ace's flames blazed hotter. Because I tried to chase Blackbeard alone, because I was too proud to accept help. The brothers locked eyes, an understanding passing between them that transcended words. But that future doesn't have to happen, Ace continued, his gaze shifting back to CP9. Because this time I'm not fighting alone, and neither are you, little brother. The battle that followed was swift and decisive. CP9's advanced techniques, which should have overwhelmed the Straw Hats, proved inadequate against the combined might of Haki-enhanced attacks and coordinated teamwork. Lucci's Rokushiki was impressive, but it couldn't stand against Luffy's precognitive abilities and armament Haki-enhanced strikes. When the dust settled, Robin stood free among her rescued crewmates, tears streaming down her face as she realized the lengths her friends had gone to save her. "I want to live," she cried, the words echoing through the damaged building. "Take me out to sea with you." As they prepared to leave Water 7 aboard their newly repaired ship, saved by Ace's intervention before she could be damaged beyond repair, Luffy stood at the bow with his brother beside him. "Ace," he said quietly, "that dream you mentioned. My observation Haki has been showing me glimpses of possible futures for years," Ace admitted. "Most pirates don't develop that level of foresight, but," he touched the pendant around his neck, "let's just say I've had motivation to look ahead. And now," Ace smiled, the expression free of the sadness that had haunted him since beginning his hunt for Blackbeard. "Now the future looks a lot brighter. We're stronger together, Luffy. And whatever's coming next, the world government, the emperors, even Blackbeard, will face it as brothers." As the Going Merry sailed away from Water 7, her hull reinforced and her spirit renewed by the knowledge that her crew would never abandon her, the two brothers stood side by side watching the city fade into the distance. The bond between fire and rubber had been forged anew, and the world would soon learn what it meant to face the united will of Shadows of Thriller Bark. The eerie fog that surrounded Thriller Bark seemed to part before the Going Merry as she sailed into the Florian Triangle, her newly reinforced hull cutting through the dark waters with renewed confidence. Luffy stood at the bow, his enhanced observation Haki picking up thousands of presences ahead, but something was wrong with them. They felt hollow, empty, like echoes of life rather than life itself. "This place gives me the creeps," Nami muttered, clutching her climatact as ghostly shapes drifted past their ship in the fog. Ace, who had been training with Zoro on deck, paused mid-swing as his own Haki detected the same anomalies his brother sensed. "Luffy, those presences, they're not alive, are they?" "No," Luffy said grimly, "but they're not completely dead either. It's like they're stuck in between." Robin looked up from an ancient tome she'd been studying. "According to this text, we're entering the territory of one of the 7 warlords of the sea, Gecko Moria. He's said to have the power to steal and manipulate shadows." "Shadows?" Chopper squeaked, hiding behind Frankie's massive frame. "Can shadows really be stolen?" Their question was answered soon enough as their ship was swallowed by an enormous mouth, carrying them into the belly of the world's largest pirate ship. Thriller Bark stretched out before them like a nightmare carnival, a floating island complete with graveyards, gothic mansions, and an army of zombies shambling through the perpetual darkness. "Welcome to my domain," boomed a voice from the shadows as a massive figure emerged from the mansion at the island's center. Gecko Moria, one of the 7 warlords, stood silhouetted against the moon, his horned silhouette and scissor-like hands cutting an imposing figure. "I am Gecko Moria, Master of Shadows and Lord of the Undead. Your shadows will make fine additions to my..." His dramatic introduction was cut short as Luffy's conqueror's Haki suddenly exploded outward, washing over the entire island like a tidal wave of pure willpower. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across Thriller Bark, zombies by the hundreds suddenly stopped mid-shamble, their borrowed shadows writhing and twisting as if trying to escape their reanimated bodies. Weaker zombies simply collapsed, their stolen life force unable to maintain cohesion under the overwhelming pressure of Luffy's will. "Impossible," Moria gasped, his own knees buckling under the assault. "How can a mere rookie possess such overwhelming Haki?" But Luffy wasn't finished. As his conqueror's Haki continued to ripple outward, something extraordinary began to happen. The stolen shadows, trapped for years within zombie bodies, started responding to his call, not because he commanded them, but because his will represented freedom itself. "The shadows?" Robin breathed in amazement as wisps of dark energy began rising from collapsed zombies throughout the island. "His Haki is actually liberating them." Moria watched in horror as centuries of carefully collected shadows began to abandon their zombie hosts, flowing through the air like dark rivers toward the source of the overwhelming presence. His ultimate technique, the power that had made him one of the 7 warlords, was being undone by sheer force of will. "No, no!" Moria screamed, his hands glowing with shadow energy as he tried desperately to maintain control. "I won't let some rookie destroy everything I've built." The battle that followed was unlike anything Thriller Bark had ever witnessed. Moria, desperate to maintain his power, unleashed his most devastating techniques. Shadow's Asgard Doppelman even attempts to steal the Straw Hat's shadows directly. But every attack was countered by Luffy's combination of enhanced observation, Haki predicting his moves, and armament Haki-enhanced strikes that cut through shadow constructs like they were made of paper. "Your shadows belong to their rightful owners," Luffy declared, his fist crackling with black energy as he delivered a devastating punch to Moria's massive form. "I won't let you keep them trapped." Ace fought alongside his brother, his flames burning away shadow constructs while providing cover for the rest of the crew. "This guy's power is twisted," he called out between attacks. "He's stealing people's very essence." The turning point came when Brook appeared, a living skeleton whose shadow had been stolen 50 years ago. But instead of being a helpless victim, Brook found himself empowered by Luffy's presence, his own spiritual energy resonating with the liberating force of the young pirate's Haki. "My shadow," Brook said in wonder as his stolen essence, freed from its zombie host by Luffy's power, began flowing back to him. "After 50 years, I can finally feel whole again." As Brook's shadow reunited with his skeletal form, something magical happened. His music, powered by both returned completeness and inspired by Luffy's unwavering determination, began to resonate across the entire island. The melody carried with it a message of hope and freedom that every stolen shadow could hear. "Yo-ho-ho-ho," Brook laughed, his violin producing notes that seemed to glow with inner light. "Young captain, your soul shines brighter than any shadow could ever dim." Moria made one final, desperate attempt to turn the tide. Absorbing every remaining shadow on his island into himself, he transformed into a massive, nightmarish version of his former self, Shadow's Asgard taken to its absolute limit. "I'll show you the true power of shadows," the enlarged Moria roared, his voice echoing across the Florian Triangle. "Even your Haki cannot stand against this." But he was wrong. As Moria's enlarged form loomed over them, Luffy's response was not fear but compassion. "You're just scared," Luffy said, his voice carrying clearly despite Moria's enormous size. "Scared of being weak, scared of losing your crew again. But stealing other people's strength won't make you strong, it just makes you empty." The words hit Moria harder than any physical blow. Deep within his shadow-bloated form, memories of his original crew, lost to Kaido years ago, came flooding back. The pain, the helplessness, the desperate need to never feel that weak again. Luffy's next attack wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. His conqueror's Haki, refined by training with Ace and guided by genuine understanding of his opponent's pain, struck directly at the core of Moria's stolen power. Gomu no. Luffy's fist expanded to enormous size, coated in both armament Haki and something else, a kind of purifying energy that seemed to burn away corruption itself. "King's cleansing?" The punch connected not with Moria's body, but with the twisted mass of stolen shadows that comprised his enlarged form. The impact sent ripples of liberating force through every shadow simultaneously, freeing them all in one massive burst of light. Across the Florian Triangle, people who had lived in despair for years suddenly saw their shadows return to them. Ships that had been drifting aimlessly in the fog suddenly found their crews restored to wholeness. The very atmosphere of the Cursed Sea seemed to clear as 50 years of accumulated misery was washed away. Moria, reduced to his normal size and stripped of his stolen power, collapsed unconscious on the deck of his ship. But he was alive, and for the first time in decades, his dreams were not haunted by the shadows of his failures. As the crew prepared to leave Thriller Bark, now a ghost ship drifting empty in waters that no longer seemed cursed, they were joined by Brook, their new musician whose debt to Luffy could never be repaid. "Captain," Brook said formally, bowing his skeletal frame, "you have given me back more than my shadow. You've given me back my purpose. If you'll have me, I would be honored to sail with you until we reach the end of the Grand Line." "Of course," Luffy grinned, his enthusiasm infectious. "We need a musician, and your music is amazing." But their celebration was cut short by the arrival of an unexpected visitor. A massive paw-like hand slammed onto the deck behind them, followed by the imposing figure of Bartholomew Kuma, another of the 7 warlords of the sea. Monkey D. Luffy, Kuma's mechanical voice carried an odd note of respect. Your actions here have been illuminating. The crew tensed for battle, but Kuma raised his hands in a gesture of peace. I am not here to fight. I am here to deliver a message. A message, Ace stepped forward, flames dancing around his fists. From who? From one who has been watching your brother's growth with great interest, Kuma replied. Your early mastery of Haki has not gone unnoticed by those who once sailed with the Pirate King. Before anyone could ask what he meant, Kuma's hand moved to his ear, activating a Den Mushi concealed within his cybernetic modifications. Young Monkey D. Luffy, came a voice that made both brothers' hearts skip a beat. This is Silver's Rayleigh. I believe it's time we had a conversation. Luffy's eyes widened. The Dark King. But how, your Haki boy? Rayleigh's voice carried warmth and urgency in equal measure. It's awakened far ahead of schedule. The timeline Roger spoke of, the one that would herald the final war, it's accelerating. Ace gripped Luffy's shoulder, his face grave. What timeline? What war? 25 years ago, my captain saw the future, Rayleigh's voice continued through Kuma's communication device. He knew someone would come who could change everything. But he expected it to take 25 years of gradual preparation. Your brother has compressed that timeline into less than 2. Kuma's mechanical eyes fixed on Luffy with something almost resembling sympathy. The world government is mobilizing earlier than anticipated. The 4 emperors are making moves, and at the center of it all, he gestured to Luffy, the boy who rings bells and frees shadows. What do you want us to do? Nami asked, though her voice trembled with the weight of destiny settling on their shoulders. Grow stronger, Rayleigh's voice commanded. Faster than anyone has before. The war that will determine the fate of the world is coming, and whether you're ready or not, you'll be at its center. The communication ended, leaving the crew in stunned silence as Kuma prepared to depart. One more thing, the cyborg warlord said before activating his powers. Portgas D. Ace, your decision to abandon the hunt for Blackbeard may have saved more than just your life, but Blackbeard's plans continue to unfold. He grows stronger while you grow wiser. Remember that wisdom without strength is merely philosophy. With that ominous warning, Kuma vanished in a burst of compressed air, leaving the Straw Hats alone on their ship as Thriller Bark faded into the fog behind them. Luffy stood at the bow, his enhanced senses picking up disturbances across the Grand Line, movements of massive forces, the gathering of power, the sense of destiny rushing toward them like a tsunami. Ace, he said quietly, I think I'm starting to understand what you meant about everything changing. His brother nodded grimly. The world's strongest forces are all moving now, Luffy. And like it or not, they're all moving because of you. As the Going Merry sailed away from the Florian Triangle, her crew enriched by the addition of Brook and her captain burdened with the knowledge of approaching destiny, the fog that had shrouded the Cursed Waters for decades finally began to clear. But ahead of them, other storms were gathering, storms that would test not just their strength but the very bonds that held them together. The calm before the storm was ending. The real test was about to begin. Where kings stand united, the massive mangrove trees of Sabaody archipelago rose from the ocean like ancient pillars holding up the sky, their soap bubble-coated roots creating a dreamlike atmosphere that belied the danger lurking within. As the Going Merry approached Grove 1, Luffy's enhanced observation Haki was already picking up an unprecedented concentration of powerful presences across the island. There are so many strong people here, he said quietly, his brow furrowed in concentration. Some of them feel familiar somehow. Ace nodded grimly beside him, his own Haki confirming what his brother sensed. Sabaody is where all the supernovas gather before entering the new world. Every rookie crew with a bounty over 100 million berries ends up here eventually. Supernovas? Nami asked nervously, already calculating the potential threats to their bounty. The 11 rookies with the highest bounties of this generation, Robin explained, though with Luffy's recent actions. She glanced at their captain with a mixture of pride and concern. That number might have changed. Brook's skeletal fingers plucked a haunting melody on his violin. Yo-ho-ho-ho, I can feel it too, the tension in the air, like the moment before a great symphony begins. As they docked at Grove 41, word of their arrival spread quickly through the archipelago's underground networks. In various corners of the massive island, other rookie crews were already taking notice. At Grove 24, Eustace, Captain Kidd looked up from his meal as one of his subordinates burst into the restaurant. "Captain, the Straw Hat Pirates just arrived, and," the subordinate swallowed nervously, "Fire Fist Ace is with them." Kidd's metal arm sparked with electromagnetic energy. "Fire Fist, eh? This just got a lot more interesting." Meanwhile, at Grove 21, Trafalgar Law paused in his conversation with his crew. His observation Haki, while not as developed as Luffy's, was sensitive enough to detect the massive presence that had just arrived on the island. "Mujiwaria," he murmured, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Your Haki has grown considerably since Alabasta." And at Grove 27, Drake, secretly a marine spy, immediately activated a hidden den mushy. "This is Drake, confirming arrival of Monkey D. Luffy and Portgas D. Ace on Sabaody. Recommend immediate admiral deployment." The Straw Hats' peaceful exploration of the archipelago's attractions was short-lived. At Grove 1, where human auctions were conducted in broad daylight, they encountered the ugly reality of the world government's tolerance for slavery. The sight of people being sold like property triggered something deep and violent in Luffy's psyche. "This is wrong," he said, his voice carrying a dangerous edge that made nearby civilians unconsciously step back. "This is really, really wrong." Ace placed a warning hand on his brother's shoulder, feeling the Conqueror's Haki beginning to build beneath Luffy's surface calm. "Luffy, remember what we practiced, control before power." But control became impossible when they witnessed a celestial dragon, St. Charlos, casually shoot a commoner for the crime of breathing the same air. The world noble's laughter at his victim's suffering was the spark that lit a fuse that had been building since Alabasta. Luffy's Conqueror's Haki exploded outward with such force that windows shattered across 3 groves. Every person within a mile radius felt it, a pressure so overwhelming that even seasoned pirates and marines found themselves struggling to remain conscious. "I don't care who you think you are," Luffy said, his voice echoing with the authority of kings as he advanced on the shocked celestial dragon. "Nobody gets to treat people like that." St. Charlos raised his pistol with a trembling hand, his pampered mind unable to comprehend that someone would dare threaten him. You can't touch me, I'm a world noble." "An admiral will." The punch that sent him flying through the auction house wall was enhanced with such perfectly controlled armament Haki that it bypassed his bodyguard's defenses entirely. The celestial dragon's unconscious form crashed through several buildings before coming to rest in Grove 3. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, as if a dam had burst, chaos erupted across the entire archipelago. "An admiral is definitely coming now," Ace said grimly as they regrouped with the rest of their crew. "Probably Kizaru if the Marines are smart, he's the fastest." "Let him come," came a voice from behind them. They turned to see Eustace Kidd approaching, his spiky red hair and permanent scowl immediately recognizable. "Any admiral who wants a piece of us will have to go through all of us." Following Kidd came the other supernovas, Law with his spotted hat and Nadachi, Hawkins with his tarot cards, Drake in his marine-like coat, Bonnie with her pizza-stained face, Capone with his fortress-like build, Apu with his musical instruments, and Uruj with his monk-like demeanor. "Mujiwaria," Law said with a slight nod of respect. "That display of Conqueror's Haki was impressive. It seems the stories about your awakening in Alabasta weren't exaggerated." Luffy looked around at the gathered pirates, his enhanced senses reading the complex mix of emotions radiating from each of them. Respect, wariness, curiosity, and underneath it all, hope. "You all felt it too, didn't you?" he said suddenly. "That what just happened here isn't just about one world noble. It's about something bigger." Hawkins drew a tarot card, studying it with his usual stoic expression. "The cards show a 76% chance of a world-changing event occurring within the next few hours. The tower, reversed, old structures crumbling. Old structures like the world government's stranglehold on freedom," Drake muttered, momentarily forgetting his marine loyalties in the face of what he'd just witnessed. Bonnie looked up from her pizza, her usual childish demeanor replaced by something harder. "My crew's in. Anyone who punches a celestial dragon and lives to tell about it has balls worthy of respect." One by one, the other supernovas voiced their agreement. What started as individual crews protecting themselves from admiral retaliation had evolved into something unprecedented, a temporary alliance of the most dangerous rookies of their generation. When Bartholomew Kuma arrived ahead of Kizaru's expected deployment, he found not a scattered group of panicking rookies, but a coordinated force of 11 pirate crews working in perfect harmony. "This is unexpected," Kuma said, his mechanical eyes scanning the organized defense the supernovas had established around Grove 12. "Bartholomew Kuma," Ace called out, flames dancing around his fists. "We know you're here to scatter us to the four corners of the world. Not happening." Law's room ability created a massive spherical barrier around their position, while Kid's magnetic powers had turned every piece of metal on 3 groves into a defensive network. Hawkins' straw dolls were positioned strategically as early warning systems, and Bonnie had aged several dozen trees into massive barriers. But it was Luffy who stepped forward to address the cyborg warlord directly. "You helped us before," he said, his enhanced observation Haki reading the complex emotions within Kuma's modified consciousness. "You warned us about what was coming. Why are you here to hurt us now?" Kuma's mechanical features shifted slightly, the closest thing to surprise his modified body could express. "You can sense it, can't you? The conflict within my programming. You don't want to do this," Luffy continued, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "Something inside you is fighting against your orders." For a long moment, Kuma stood motionless, his internal systems clearly at war with each other. When he spoke again, his voice carried a note of something almost human. "Monkey D. Luffy," he said slowly, "your ability to see the truth within people, it's more dangerous than your haki. Very well. I will not scatter your crew today." Instead, Kuma raised his paws and began creating air pressure barriers around their position. "When Admiral Kizaru arrives, you will have approximately 3 minutes before his light-based attacks penetrate these defenses. I suggest you use that time wisely." "Why are you helping us?" Kid demanded, his electromagnetic aura sparking with suspicion. Kuma's mechanical eyes fixed on a point in the distance, as if seeing something beyond the present moment. "Because sometimes, even machines can choose hope over programming." The battle that followed when Admiral Kizaru arrived was unlike anything the Marines had anticipated. Instead of individual crews being picked off one by one, they faced a coordinated assault from 11 different fighting styles working in perfect synchronization. Kizaru's lightspeed kicks were deflected by Kid's magnetic barriers, while Law's spatial manipulation redirected the Admiral's laser beams back at him. Hawkins' damage redirection kept the more vulnerable crew members safe, while Bonnie's age manipulation created confusion in the Marine ranks. But it was the combination of Luffy and Ace fighting together that truly shocked the Admiral. Fire and rubber, enhanced by perfectly synchronized haki, created attacks that even someone of Kizaru's caliber had to take seriously. "This is troublesome," Kizaru muttered as he dodged a coordinated assault from multiple supernovas. "These rookies fight like they've been training together for years." "Because we understand something you don't," Luffy called out, his fist crackling with armament haki as he launched another attack. "When people fight for freedom together, they become stronger than the sum of their parts." The battle's turning point came when Silver's Rayleigh arrived, not to save the rookies, but to witness their coordinated strength firsthand. "Impressive," the Dark King said as he effortlessly blocked one of Kizaru's lightspeed attacks. "You've managed to do in hours what it took Roger's crew months to achieve: true unity of purpose." Kizaru paused his assault, recognizing that fighting both Rayleigh and 11 coordinated supernovas would be beyond even his abilities. "This isn't over," the Admiral warned, his light-based form beginning to dissipate. "The world government won't ignore what happened here." "Good," Luffy replied, his conqueror's haki still radiating determination. "We're done being ignored." As the smoke cleared and the Marines retreated to plan their next move, the 11 supernova crews found themselves forever changed by their shared experience. "This alliance," Law said, studying his new companions with calculating eyes. "It changes everything." "The balance of power in the new world just shifted," Drake agreed, his Marine training helping him recognize the strategic implications. "When word of this gets out?" "Let it get out," Kid declared, his electromagnetic aura still sparking with battle readiness. Let every emperor and admiral know that the next generation isn't waiting for permission anymore. Rayleigh approached Luffy, his expression mixing pride with concern. Boy, what you've accomplished here today, it's remarkable, but it also means the final war Roger foresaw is now inevitable. Final war? Bonnie asked around a mouthful of pizza. The war that will determine whether the world government's 800-year reign continues, Rayleigh explained gravely, or whether a new age of freedom begins. Luffy looked around at his new allies, pirates who had started the day as competitors and were ending it as brothers in arms. Then we'll be ready, he said simply. All of us, together. As the Straw Hats prepared to leave Sabaody not as fugitives but as the acknowledged leaders of the largest rookie alliance in pirate history, Ace placed a proud hand on his brother's shoulder. Luffy, he said quietly, do you realize what you've just done? You've united the worst generation before they even earned that name. Luffy grinned, his characteristic optimism undimmed by the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. I just made some new friends. Friends who understand that some things are worth fighting for. But as their ship sailed away from the archipelago, carrying news that would shake the foundations of the world, none of them could have imagined how quickly those bonds would be tested. The final pieces were moving into position. The war to end all wars was approaching. And at its center stood a 17-year-old boy in a straw hat whose early mastery of the king's power had just changed the fate of the world. Preparation for war, the journey from Sabaody to Amazon Lily had been unlike any the Straw Hats had ever experienced. Instead of fleeing as scattered, desperate refugees, they sailed as the spearhead of the most powerful rookie alliance in pirate history. The 11 crews moved in a coordinated convoy, their ships spread across the calm belt like a small armada. Luffy stood at the bow of the Going Merry, his enhanced observation Haki stretching out across the unusually active waters. The sea kings that normally ruled these depths seemed different, less aggressive, more curious. It was as if his conqueror's Haki had reached some kind of understanding with the ancient creatures. They're not attacking, Nami observed nervously, watching massive shadows pass beneath their ships without incident. Why aren't they attacking? Because they recognize him, came a voice from the water. The crew turned to see a magnificent figure rising from the depths, Boa Hancock, the pirate empress, standing on the back of a massive sea king with her sisters flanking her. Monkey D. Luffy, Hancock said, her voice carrying a mixture of curiosity and something else. Respect. Your reputation precedes you, as does your overwhelming presence. Even from a distance, Luffy's awakened Haki was affecting the normally composed empress. Her cheeks showed the faintest hint of color as she approached their ship. Hancock, Ace called out with a knowing grin, heard you were one of the 7 warlords. You here to fight us? Fight, Hancock's laugh was like silver bells. Quite the opposite. Any man who punches a celestial dragon and lives to boast about it has earned my attention. Amazon Lily was unlike anything the male members of the crew had expected. The island's warrior women, initially hostile to the presence of men, found themselves oddly calm in Luffy's presence. His conqueror's Haki, when properly controlled, didn't intimidate, it inspired. Even the most hardened Kyuja warriors found themselves drawn to the young pirate's infectious determination. Your Haki, Elder Nyan observed as she watched Luffy demonstrate his abilities to a gathering of amazed Amazons. It's unlike anything I've ever encountered. Most conquerors' Haki dominates through fear or intimidation. Yours liberates. Luffy scratched his head in confusion. I don't really understand all that stuff. I just want people to be free to make their own choices. And that, Hancock said softly, having joined the demonstration, is why you're so dangerous to the world government. The revelation of why came later that evening when Hancock shared her story with the assembled crews. The brand of the celestial dragons, the slavery, the suffering, all of it laid bare before pirates who had thought they understood the depths of the world government's cruelty. This is why we fight, Luffy said simply after Hancock finished speaking. Not for treasure or fame, for people like you, for everyone who's been hurt by people who think they're better than everyone else. The words hit Hancock like a physical blow. In that moment, her legendary beauty seemed insignificant compared to the radiance of Luffy's conviction. The training that followed was unlike anything any of them had imagined. Silver's Rayleigh arrived within days, not alone but accompanied by a figure that made even the Dark King seem subdued. Monkey D. Dragon, the world's most wanted man. "Father," Luffy said simply, as if meeting the leader of the Revolutionary Army was an everyday occurrence. Dragon studied his son with eyes that missed nothing. "Your Haki awakening has accelerated everything, Luffy. The Revolutionary Army's timeline, the world government's plans, even the movements of the four emperors. The final war Roger predicted will begin within months, not years." "Then we need to be ready," Ace said firmly, stepping up beside his adopted brother. "All of us?" What followed was the most intensive training period in pirate history. Rayleigh worked with Luffy to refine his raw Haki into precise techniques, while Dragon coordinated training regimens for all 11 supernova crews. The Amazon warriors, inspired by Luffy's presence and Hancock's open support, volunteered as sparring partners. "Your observation Haki is remarkable," Rayleigh observed as Luffy effortlessly dodged attacks from 3 directions simultaneously. "But it's your Conqueror's Haki that truly sets you apart. You're not just overwhelming opponents, you're changing them." "Changing them how?" "Watch," Rayleigh gestured to a group of Kyuja warriors who had been training with Kid's crew. Despite their natural hostility toward men, they were working in perfect coordination with the notoriously violent supernova. "Your presence doesn't just inspire your allies, it brings out the best in everyone around you." The intelligence network that Dragon had built over decades proved invaluable in tracking the movements of their enemies. Reports flowed in from across the Grand Line. Blackbeard's rapid ascension to warlord status, the world government's mobilization of all 3 admirals, whispers of ancient weapons being awakened. "Blackbeard has captured someone," Dragon reported during one of their strategy meetings. "Not Ace, someone else, but whoever it is, it's important enough to trigger a public execution." "Who?" Ace demanded, his flames dancing with barely controlled emotion. "We don't know yet, but our intelligence suggests it's someone connected to Whitebeard's crew. Blackbeard is trying to force a confrontation." Law, who had been studying maritime charts, looked up with a grim expression. "If he's targeting Whitebeard's people specifically, this isn't just about gaining power, it's personal." "Everything Blackbeard does is personal," Ace said bitterly. "He killed Thatch. He destroyed everything the Whitebeard pirates stood for. And now we stop him," Luffy said simply. "All of us together." The alliance that had formed at Sabaody had grown stronger during their training. The 11 crews no longer fought as separate entities, they moved as a single, coordinated force. Kid's magnetic abilities worked in perfect harmony with Law's spatial manipulation. Bonnie's age control complemented Hawkins' damage redirection. Even Drake, still conflicted about his marine loyalties, had found his place among the group. The call came on a morning when the sea was unusually calm. Hancock's Den Mushi crackled to life with an emergency transmission from Marine headquarters. "Attention all warlords," Fleet Admiral Sengoku's voice carried across the speaker. "You are hereby summoned to participate in the public execution of Marco the Phoenix, 1st Division Commander of the Whitebeard Pirates. Failure to comply will result in immediate revocation of your warlord status." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Ace's flames exploded outward with such intensity that the air itself seemed to catch fire. "Marco," he roared, his emotional control completely shattered. "That bastard captured Marco. This changes everything," Dragon said grimly. "Marco isn't just Whitebeard's first commander, he's effectively the old man's successor. If Blackbeard has him, then Whitebeard will come," Hancock finished, her face pale with the implications. "All of Whitebeard's forces will sail to Marineford. And so will we," Luffy declared, his Conqueror's Haki beginning to radiate outward as his determination crystallized. "Marco's crew. That makes him family." Rayleigh placed a hand on Luffy's shoulder. "Boy, do you understand what you're proposing? This won't be like Sabaody where you could retreat if things went badly. This will be war, total war, with the entire world watching." "Good," Luffy replied, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had looked destiny in the eye and refused to blink. "Let them watch. Let them see what happens when people fight for what's right." The preparation for war began immediately. Dragon's revolutionary army would provide intelligence and support, while Hancock's Amazon Lily would serve as a staging ground. The 11 supernova crews trained with desperate intensity, knowing that their next battle would determine not just their own fates, but the future of the world itself. Luffy, Ace said one evening as they watched the sunset from Amazon Lily's cliffs. "That vision I told you about, the one of my execution, it's changed. Changed how? Now I see Marco on that platform instead of me. But I also see something else." Ace's eyes gleamed with fierce hope. "I see us winning, all of us together changing the world." Luffy grinned, his characteristic optimism undimmed by the massive responsibility resting on his shoulders. "Of course we'll win. We're not just fighting for Marco, we're fighting for everyone who's ever been told they don't matter." As night fell over Amazon Lily, the largest armada of rookie pirates in history prepared for a battle that would shake the very foundations of the world. The war that Gold Roger had foreseen was finally beginning. And at its center stood Monkey D. Luffy, whose early mastery of the king's power had transformed a rescue mission into a revolution. The calm before the storm was ending. The age of pirates was about to give way to something entirely new, an age of freedom, forged in the fires of war and tempered by the unbreakable bonds of those who dared to dream of a better world. Marineford reimagined, the massive gates of justice creaked open to reveal a sight that would be burned into history forever. Marineford, the greatest fortress of marine power, stood ready for war. But this time, the forces arrayed against it were unlike anything the world government had ever faced. From the west came Whitebeard's armada, dozens of allied crews following the Moby Dick as she cut through the waves with the fury of a man who had lost his son. Edward Newgate stood at the bow, his bicento gleaming in the morning sun, his conqueror's Haki already making the very air tremble. From the east came something unprecedented, the united fleet of the Supernova Alliance. 11 crews sailing in perfect formation, led by the Going Mary and her straw-hatted captain whose presence had already begun to shift the balance of the world. And from the south, most shocking of all, came the Revolutionary Army's hidden fleet, with Monkey D. Dragon himself standing at the prow of his flagship, his weathered coat billowing in winds that seemed to answer his call. On the execution platform at Marineford's center, Marco the Phoenix knelt in sea-stone shackles, his regenerative flames suppressed but his spirit unbroken. Beside him stood Fleet Admiral Sengoku, his face grim with the knowledge that this war would determine the fate of the world government itself. "Let this be a lesson to all who would oppose justice." Sengoku's voice boomed across the fortress through den mushy speakers. "The punishment for defying the world government is death." But his words were drowned out by a sound that made the very foundations of Marineford shake, 3 separate bursts of Conqueror's Haki colliding in midair above the fortress. Whitebeard's overwhelming presence, Luffy's liberating aura, and Dragon's revolutionary will crash together with such force that the sky itself seemed to crack. "Marco!" Ace's voice carried across the water as flames erupted around his entire body. "We're coming!" The first wave of the assault began simultaneously from all 3 directions. Whitebeard's earthquake powers sent massive tsunamis racing toward the fortress while his allied crews charged behind walls of devastating seawater. The Supernova Alliance moved with surgical precision, Law's spatial manipulation creating chaos in the marine ranks, while Kid's magnetic abilities turned their own weapons against them. But it was the Revolutionary Army's approach that truly shocked the Marines. Dragon's weather control abilities brought down lightning and hurricane winds, while his commanders, Ivankov, Inazuma, and dozens of others, landed directly within the fortress walls through coordinated aerial assaults. Admiral Akinu stepped forward, his magma-enhanced fist glowing with enough heat to melt steel. "You revolutionaries dare show your faces here, I'll burn every last one of you to ash." "Try it," came a voice from behind him. Akinu spun to find Luffy standing impossibly close, having somehow crossed the entire battlefield in seconds. The young pirate's eyes burned with an intensity that made even the Admiral hesitate. "Monkey D." "Luffy," Akinu growled, magma beginning to drip from his arm. "The spawn of Dragon and grandson of Garp, your bloodline ends here." Gomu no." Luffy's fist expanded to massive size, coated in armament haki so dense it seemed to absorb light itself. Red Hawk, the collision between rubber and magma created an explosion that could be heard across the entire Grand Line. When the smoke cleared, both combatants were still standing, but Akinu's usually confident expression had been replaced by something approaching respect. "Impossible," he breathed. "How can a rookie's haki be this advanced?" "Because I'm not just fighting for myself," Luffy replied, his conqueror's haki beginning to radiate outward again. "I'm fighting for everyone who believes in freedom." Across the battlefield, the coordination between the three allied forces was unlike anything military strategists had ever witnessed. Whitebeard's division commanders worked seamlessly alongside the Supernova crews, while Revolutionary Army officers provided tactical support and intelligence. Vista, the Flower Sword, fought back-to-back with Roronoa Zoro, their blade techniques complementing each other perfectly. Jazu's diamond-hard body provided cover for Trafalgar Law as the Surgeon of Death carved through marine formations with his spatial abilities. "This is incredible," Vice Admiral Tsuru observed from her position on the fortress walls. "They're not fighting as separate forces, they're fighting as one unified army. That's what makes them so dangerous," Sengoku replied grimly. "Unity of purpose creates strength beyond the sum of individual parts." The turning point came when Admiral Kizaru attempted to execute Marco directly, his lightspeed attacks targeting the bound Phoenix. But his laser beam was intercepted by something impossible, a combined barrier formed by the Conqueror's haki of three different users working in perfect synchronization. Luffy, Whitebeard, and Dragon stood in a triangle around the execution platform, their combined will creating a dome of pure force that not even an admiral's attacks could penetrate. "This is the power of the will of D," Whitebeard declared, his voice carrying across the entire battlefield. "When those who refuse to bow their heads unite, even the gods themselves must yield." The battle reached its climax when Blackbeard finally revealed himself, emerging from the fortress's depths with his crew of level 6 impel down escapees. His dark fruit powers had grown stronger since capturing Marco, and the satisfaction on his scarred face was visible from across the battlefield. "Zehehaha. So all the big players decided to show up," Blackbeard called out, darkness beginning to swirl around his massive frame. "Perfect. I'll take all your powers and become the strongest man in the world." "Teach," Whitebeard's voice carried the weight of absolute judgment. "You broke the most important rule of piracy. You killed your own crewmate. For that, there can be no forgiveness." The confrontation between Whitebeard and his former son was everything the Marines had hoped for, two monstrous powers tearing each other apart while the fortress crumbled around them. But they hadn't counted on the intervention of the Straw Hat Captain. "Luffy, no!" Ace shouted as his brother launched himself directly into the battle between the two most dangerous pirates in the world. "You can't face them both!" But Luffy wasn't trying to face them both. His enhanced observation haki had shown him something others couldn't see, the exact moment when Blackbeard would be vulnerable, distracted by his battle with Whitebeard. Gomu no. Luffy's attack wasn't aimed at either of the massive pirates. Instead, he targeted the sea stone chains binding Marco to the execution platform. King Kong Gatling, the barrage of haki-enhanced punches shattered the supposedly unbreakable restraints in seconds. Marco's phoenix flames erupted skyward as his powers returned, his cry of freedom audible across the entire battlefield. Finally, Marco laughed as he took to the air, his blue flames healing the injuries he'd sustained during captivity. "Thanks, Straw Hat, now let's end this war." With Marco free and fighting alongside them, the tide of battle shifted decisively. The Phoenix's regenerative flames could heal wounded allies while his aerial attacks provided crucial support from above. More importantly, his freedom had shattered the psychological advantage the Marines had built their strategy around. "Retreat," Sengoku finally commanded, his tactical mind recognizing that continuing the battle would only lead to the complete destruction of Marineford. "All forces fall back to secondary positions." But Luffy's voice cut through the chaos, amplified by his conqueror's haki until it could be heard by everyone on the battlefield. "No more running, no more fighting." His words carried such absolute authority that even the fleeing Marines found themselves stopping. "This war ends here, but not with more death. It ends with change." He stood at the center of the battlefield, his arms spread wide, his straw hat casting a shadow over eyes that blazed with unwavering determination. The world government says they rule through justice, but I've seen their justice. I've seen them sell people like property, attack innocent kingdoms, and execute heroes for the crime of seeking freedom. His conqueror's haki pulsed outward with each word, and something impossible began to happen. Marines and pirates alike found themselves lowering their weapons, drawn by the sheer conviction in the young pirate's voice. "I'm going to be Pirate King," Luffy declared, his voice echoing across Marineford and beyond to every den mushy receiver in the world. "And when I am, the first thing I'm going to do is tear down this corrupt system and build something better, a world where everyone can chase their dreams without fear." The silence that followed was absolute. Then, from somewhere in the Marine ranks came the sound of a single soldier dropping his weapon. Another followed, then another, until the battlefield was filled with the metallic rain of discarded arms. When Fleet Admiral Sengoku finally called for a complete ceasefire, it wasn't out of mercy. It was out of recognition that continuing the battle would only accelerate the collapse of everything the world government had built. As the three allied forces began their coordinated withdrawal, they left behind more than just a defeated marine fortress. They left behind a new reality, one where the world government's absolute authority had been openly challenged and found wanting. "This isn't over," Admiral Akinu snarled as he watched the pirates sail away. "The world government won't forget this humiliation." "No," agreed Fleet Admiral Sengoku, his voice heavy with the weight of historical change. "It isn't over, it's just beginning." On the deck of the Going Merry, as Marineford faded into the distance behind them, Luffy stood surrounded by his allies, both old and new. Ace gripped his shoulder with fierce pride, while Marco perched nearby, his phoenix flames dancing in the sea breeze. "Luffy," Whitebeard called out from the Moby Dick sailing alongside them. "Your declaration back there about tearing down the current system, you know what that means, don't you?" Luffy's grin was as bright as the sun reflecting off the ocean waves. "It means we're going to change the world, old man. All of us together." Gyururara, spoken like a true king. As the greatest armada in pirate history sailed toward the New World, their victory at Marineford had done more than just rescue Marco. It had announced the dawn of a new era, one where the established order would face challenges from those who refused to accept that the way things were was the way things had to be. The War of Kings was over. The Age of Freedom was about to begin. The will of D fulfilled. 3 months after the Battle of Marineford, the world had changed in ways that even the most visionary revolutionaries could never have imagined. The Grand Line buzzed with reports of kingdoms declaring independence from the world government. Marine bases being abandoned as soldiers defected to join the growing Revolutionary Army, and most shocking of all, the emergence of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet as a legitimate political force. On the deck of the Thousand Sunny, their new ship, a gift from Frankie's enhanced shipbuilding techniques learned during their extended training, Luffy sat cross-legged, reading reports that Robin had compiled from their intelligence network. The sight of their normally carefree captain studying documents with genuine focus was one that still amazed his crew. "Fishman Island has officially requested our protection," Robin reported, her voice carrying a note of wonder. "King Neptune specifically asked for the Straw Hat flag to be flown over their kingdom. Dressrosa's people have overthrown Doflamingo with help from local revolutionary cells," Sabo added, having revealed himself shortly after Marineford as Dragon's chief of staff. The reunion of the three sworn brothers had been emotional beyond words, but now their bond served a greater purpose. "They're asking to join our alliance as well." Ace, now officially the vice captain of the Straw Hat Pirates, looked up from a letter he'd been reading. "Pop says the territorial changes in the New World are happening faster than anyone can track. Islands that have been under Emperor control for decades are declaring independence." "And the Marines?" Nami asked nervously, her navigator's instincts always focused on potential threats. "In chaos?" Dragon reported via Den Mushi from his Revolutionary Army headquarters. "Fleet Admiral Sengoku has resigned in disgrace. Half the officer corps is demanding Akinu's promotion, while the other half is calling for complete military restructuring." Luffy set down the reports with a satisfied nod. Good, change should be messy sometimes. It means people are finally free to make their own choices. The new world that the Straw Hat Grand Fleet entered was unlike anything from the original timeline. Where once 4 emperors had ruled through fear and territorial control, now dozens of independent nations flew the Straw Hat flag as a symbol of protection and alliance rather than conquest. Their first major encounter came at Punk Hazard, but instead of finding Caesar Clown's twisted experiments, they discovered something far more significant: a secret world government research facility where scientists had been working on artificial devil fruits and human gigantification projects. "This is what they've been hiding," Robin said grimly as they explored laboratories filled with horrific evidence of human experimentation. "The world government isn't just corrupt, it's been conducting crimes against humanity for centuries." The liberation of Punk Hazard's victims, including dozens of children who had been test subjects, only strengthened the crew's resolve. When Trafalgar Law arrived seeking their help to take down Doflamingo, he found that the Straw Hats had already moved beyond such small-scale objectives. "Doflamingo is finished," Law reported with satisfaction. The Revolutionary Army's coordination with local resistance movements made his downfall inevitable. But there's something else, Mujuwaria. The world government has begun activating their ultimate contingency plans. "What kind of contingency plans?" Ace asked, his flames beginning to dance with anticipation. "Ancient weapons," Law replied grimly. "Our intelligence suggests they're trying to awaken all 3 Pluton, Poseidon, and Uranus." Luffy's expression hardened. "They're getting desperate." "Good. Desperate enemies make mistakes." The confrontation with Big Mom came sooner than expected, but not through territorial dispute, through ideology. The Emperor of Tato Land had watched the rise of the Straw Hat influence with growing alarm, seeing their message of freedom as a direct threat to her authoritarian control over her subjects. "Straw Hat?" Big Mom's voice boomed across Whole Cake Island as her massive form blocked out the sun. "Your little revolution ends here. I won't let you destroy the order I've built." "I'm not here to destroy anything," Luffy replied, his conqueror's haki flaring to match hers. "I'm here to free your children from your control." The battle that followed was unlike their original confrontation. This time, Luffy wasn't alone. He had Ace's flames, Law's spatial manipulation, and the coordinated support of multiple supernova crews. More importantly, he had something Big Mom couldn't counter: the genuine support of her own children, who had been secretly working with the Revolutionary Army to overthrow their mother's tyrannical rule. "Mama," Katakuri said as he stood beside Luffy rather than against him, his usual loyalty replaced by something stronger, hope for his siblings' freedom. "It's time for this family to heal." Big Mom's defeat marked the end of the Emperor system itself. With Whitebeard voluntarily stepping aside to support the new generation and Kaido facing coordinated assaults from multiple revolutionary fronts, the old order was crumbling faster than anyone could have predicted. The final confrontation came not on some distant battlefield, but in the heart of the world government itself, the Holy Land of Mary Geoise. The 5 elders, faced with the complete collapse of their 800-year reign, had made the desperate decision to reveal their ultimate trump card. "Behold," Saint Jagarsha Saturn announced as the ancient weapon Uranus rose from beneath the Red Line itself, a massive construct of ancient technology that dwarfed even the largest ships. The power that has maintained order for centuries. But as the weapon charged its devastating attack, aimed at wiping out the Revolutionary Army's fleet below, it was met by something unprecedented: the combined conqueror's haki of not just Luffy, but every member of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet working in perfect synchronization. Thousands of allied pirates, revolutionaries, and freed nations focused their collective will through their shared symbol, the straw hat that represented freedom itself. The resulting burst of spiritual energy didn't just deflect Uranus's attack. It overwrote the ancient programming that had enslaved the weapon for centuries. "Impossible," Saint Saturn gasped as Uranus began to turn its weapons on Mary Geoise itself. "How can mere pirates command such power?" "Because we're not just pirates," Luffy said, his voice carrying across the battlefield with absolute authority. "We're everyone who ever dreamed of being free. And dreams are stronger than any ancient weapon." The aftermath of the Holy Land's liberation was swift and decisive. The world government's remaining loyalists, faced with the loss of their ultimate authority, either surrendered or fled to distant corners of the world. The Revolutionary Army, now openly supported by dozens of nations, began the massive task of establishing a new world order based on freedom rather than control. "So what happens now?" Nami asked as they stood on the deck of the Thousand Sunny, watching the sun set over a world that was finally truly free. "Now we keep sailing," Luffy replied with his characteristic grin. "The Grand Line is full of islands that need to know they're not alone anymore. People who need to hear that they can choose their own destinies." "And the One Piece?" Zoro asked, his hand resting on his swords with the satisfaction of someone who had helped reshape the world. "We'll find it when we find it," Luffy said simply, "but I think I already know what it is." "What?" Chopper asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. Luffy gestured to their assembled fleet, hundreds of ships flying the Straw Hat flag, carrying people from every corner of the world who had chosen to stand together for freedom. "This," he said softly, "the One Piece isn't treasure or power, it's proof that people from anywhere can come together and create something beautiful. Roger left it at Laugh Tale because he knew someone would come along who could bring everyone together to find it." Ace placed a proud hand on his brother's shoulder. "Spoken like a true pirate king." "Pirate king?" Luffy laughed, the sound carrying across the water to every ship in their fleet. "I don't want to be king of pirates, I want to be the person who proved that nobody needs kings at all." As the Straw Hat Grand Fleet sailed toward Laugh Tale not to claim the One Piece but to share it with the world, the changes they had wrought continued to ripple outward. Islands that had been isolated for centuries opened their borders to trade and friendship. Technologies suppressed by the world government were shared freely among nations. The artificial barriers that had divided the world for 800 years were finally breaking down. Brook played a haunting melody on his violin as their ships cut through the evening waves, the music carrying messages of hope to distant shores. "Yo-ho-ho-ho, Captain, do you think Roger would be proud of what we've accomplished?" "I think he's probably laughing," Luffy replied, his gaze fixed on the horizon ahead. "Laughing because we proved that the world he dreamed of was always possible. We just had to have enough people believe in it at the same time." In the distance, the lights of Laugh Tale beckoned, not as the end of their journey, but as the beginning of a new chapter in the world's history. A chapter written not by kings and emperors, but by ordinary people who had chosen to do extraordinary things. The will of D had been fulfilled not through conquest or domination, but through the simple revolutionary act of proving that freedom was possible for everyone. The age of pirates was ending. The age of dreams was just beginning. 20 years later, the old man in the straw hat sat on the dock of a small island somewhere in the New World, watching children play in waters that were cleaner than they had been in centuries. His hair was grayer now, his face more lined, but his smile remained as bright as ever. "Grandpa Luffy," one of the children called out, "tell us the story again, about how you changed the world." Luffy chuckled, setting down the fishing pole he'd been using with typically poor results. "Which part? The part where we punched the world government in the face, or the part where we learned that the real treasure was the friends we made along the way?" "Both," the children chorused, gathering around him with the enthusiasm that only comes from hearing a favorite story retold. As Luffy began to speak, his words carried across the water to other islands, other children, other dreamers who were growing up in a world where anything was possible. The Straw Hat flag still flew over thousands of ships and nations, but now it represented something even greater than freedom. It represented the belief that tomorrow could always be better than today. And in the distance, barely visible on the horizon, new ships were setting sail with new flags and new dreams, carrying the next generation toward adventures that even Monkey D. Luffy couldn't imagine. The story of the Straw Hat Pirates had ended, but the story of human possibility would never end. From rookie to the man who toppled an 800-year regime, Luffy's early Haki journey was absolutely epic. Brothers fighting together, united supernovas, and a Marineford that ended in actual victory. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and let me know what if you want next. Thanks for watching. Peace out.